They forced us to talk about women. And over the 60 years of the history of this extraordinary institution, which is troubled by accountability issues also, but it is the one place where there's been a conversation about women at the heart of development and democracy. There's an understanding at the UN that without a change in the status of women, not just for the women and their daughters, but for the benefit of the societies, that, you know, unless we change the status of women, we can't bring democracy, we can't bring development. You know, as Eleanor Roosevelt talked about it, human rights must begin at home. Families incubate citizens. If you want human rights and democracy and development in the public square, you have to have it at home first. Mothers, you know, as a woman I wrote about used to say, free men are not, this is Margaret Sanger, free men are not born of slave mothers. So the UN has made this a centerpiece of its work, and UNIFEM is here as an example of that. And the most important other structural issue, and we're going to combine, there's people here who have been working on the new gender architecture reform at the UN. There's also the Commission on the Status of Women, and there is the CEDAW Commission. And so I want to go back just in conclusion to give you an action agenda on CEDAW, because that's where the issue of impunity, if there's impunity, nothing will ever happen. If there's accountability, it will. Where's the one place where there's accountability for countries on gender? That's the CEDAW Commission. It meets 3 times a year. Countries have to report. Our own country, if we were to sign up and be part of this extraordinary institution, would have to account for where we stand on women's rights, not only here but abroad. The notion that somehow this is an empty gesture is insane. And that's why it's so frightening to people who are against the idea of international law and afraid of somehow compromising US sovereignty. But it's also important because women are using it as a tool everywhere in the world to change their laws, to get laws against, you know, that demand accountability for violence against women, to, you know, the kinds of laws we fought for, many of us in this room, 30 years ago in the United States. It's not like somebody handed this to us. You know, there was no violence against women laws. We fought for them locally first and changed the criminal justice structure of our own country. And then we changed resource accountability at a national level in the 1990s by making sure that the federal government paid for more accountability on violence. So, I mean, to quickly bring this to a conclusion, we must pass CEDAW. Not pass it, we've actually signed it. It was signed and sent up to the United States Congress by President Carter 3 years ago. We must ratify CEDAW in this country. We must be part of this extraordinary institution at the UN that is demanding gender accountability. Now, here's the good news. For the first time, there is a very strong, very well organized, very well funded coalition of organizations from the women's movement, from the human rights movement, from the civil rights movement, being led in Washington through the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. It's changed its name from just the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights to the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and its first human rights issue is CEDAW. This is the organization that is the coalition of 200 organizations from all over the country that have brought us the civil rights revolution in the United States, led brilliantly by Wade Henderson. There is a full-time staff person, June Zeitlin, who many of us know, former Ford Foundation officer, former head of WeDo, a real activist and organizer who is funded by grants from the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, NOVO, the UN Foundation, a few others, to manage a campaign at the Leadership Conference full-time. There have been meetings on the Hill quietly. There have been meetings at the State Department. There have been meetings at the White House this very week. The answer of yes and no of where the administration stands is the answer with respect to CEDAW. Obviously, this is high on Hillary Clinton and Milan Verveer's agenda. The White House, a little less so. They have, we hear, another treaty first. Weapons or, you know, START is the #1 treaty on the agenda for ratification. CEDAW is behind. They have other things to do, Supreme Court justice to make certain that they get confirmed. Yes, they have they could pluck the hole in the Gulf. They have a few things on their agenda. I mean, I'm not, but But we need to make certain that CEDAW is on the agenda. So action items for you, because I don't want to talk and I want to let you ask a few questions. Number one, write to the White House, call the White House. There's phones, there's email activism. Tell them that you want CEDAW ratified this year before the Senate situation gets worse rather than better. We know we have probably 59 Democrats, maybe the 4 women senators. We've been talking to them who are Republicans. That gets us pretty close. We might have Scott Brown, who is a renegade Republican from a Democratic state who needs to get reelected. So that gets us within striking distance. We have a strategy to do this. The question is whether a big public campaign will help or hurt us, because a big public campaign will obviously gin up the opposition, the fundamentalists who hate this idea because they hate internationalism and they hate women. So it's a double whammy. So we have to be a little bit careful about how we do this, but let's tell the White House we want this on the agenda this year. Fine, do START first. We don't want, you know, if you have the votes on START, do START, but then let's go for CEDAW. Second, go to www.womenstreaty.org. There you will find some very good new advocacy materials. The www.womenstreaty.org, a website that is supporting this campaign. Womenstreaty.org. Simple, womenstreaty.org. There is a wonderful new report, again, paid for generously by some of the foundations, that the International Center for Research on Women has put out, giving many, many examples of how CEDAW is being used as a tool and why it's so important, and explaining it for public education. Okay, there is a...
Ellen, we have to wrap.
Okay, there's some wonderful new polling information showing how Americans, when they understand this, support this. Get involved. Make sure that all of your organizations sign up on that website if they're not already there as part of the newly empowered CEDAW coalition.
Great,
again,
thanks.
it won't solve the problems. I'm going to finish, but it's important.
Yay, we're all signed up. What's clear is that that we need to convene this panel again, Linda, and if you could give us two hours, that would be wonderful. At this point, because we have a panel following us, I would like to ask from each of the panelists. We want to leave this with some complete directives for action steps. And so, for the record, Ellen has given us one big step. For Abby, Nancy, and Zainab, what would you leave the group with? Something specific? I think you've approached some of it in your comments, but to leave the audience with.
Okay, so I'm gonna brazenly self-promote, but the thing about ambition is, if you can line it up with what the world needs, you don't have to be embarrassed to be self-promoting, right? Please come to the website for Women, War, and Peace. We need you to sign up. We need you to follow our tweets and follow our blogs. We are actively in production. We'll be on the air. We're going to be on the air in prime time on every TV set in the United States and possibly Northern Europe and Japan and Australia, with a woman's point of view about an issue that is traditionally thought to be a man's domain. And it's not going to be about our ovaries. And it's not going to be about anything except war and the role that we play in it. This is history changing. You don't get it on Lifetime and you don't get it on Oxygen, and it's a huge step in the direction of the public education campaign that Zainab so articulately. So please come support us, and when the time comes, help us turn out the audience, because if we don't get an audience, we don't get another one of these. So please help us turn out the audience, just follow us, and that would be a good thing you can do.
Nancy.
We're very aware of the unprecedented response and help that has come from the United States. And I think it would really be helpful as people continue their support of Haiti through their donations, through their advocacy, that gender issues remain at the forefront. Too often, we get all kinds of support for the country in general, for the environment, for education, but they never really specify that people who are supporting need to address the majority of the population, which unfortunately is often subsumed by the many other issues. And that when you are advocating for Haiti, when you are sending donations for Haiti, whatever your thinking, whatever your interest in Haiti, do support women artists, women schools, women clinics, whatever it is. Just always remember that the gender issue remains an inequity that has to be redressed with your support.
One is support Abby's Disney's movie, Women, War, and Peace. If you want to know a woman survivor of war and correspond with her and know who she is and understand war from her perspective, go to womenforwomen.org and sponsor a woman. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Women, Peace and Security, UN Security Council Resolution 1325. For those of you who are on the policy issue, I would love to hear any suggestions or recommendations you have. I sit on the Civil Society Advisory Group for the UN on this issue, and we're trying to collect everyone's advice and recommendations on 1325. And last but not least, it is really time, with a capital T, that we roar together. It is time to scream really loud. So thank you.
Thank you all so much.